All right. Shalom, shalom. Brakat Yahweh, Ba'asham, Yahweh Shai, Ba'asham Rakakwadash. Double honors to our apostles and elder bishops. All right, here at Great Millstone. Shalom to you, Akim. All right, who are pushing the work in truth and sincerity. Name of this lesson, I want to title it Never Forget. All right, this is dealing with the rededication of the temple, the feast of dedication, which is Hanukkah. Okay, which we're in Hanukkah right now, you know. So it's only right to kind of commemorate the history, go over it, and bring out some precepts. This is a heavy, you know, point in our history, which is left out most of the time because it's in the Apocrypha. But even the Lord himself, commemorated this day, which shows you it wasn't, just some man-made, holiday. All right, the Lord himself, you know, gives reference to this day, and just a little history on it. Okay, this is definitely during the time of the Greek um, occupation of Israel. All right, this is after Alexander the Great, you know, had went on this campaign. He died, and later, uh, his kingdom was split up. All right, into four parts. And during this time was a very dark time for the Israelites. Okay, it was a very dark time, being that the heathen, you know, desecrated the temple and made a sacrifice swine on the temple, in the temples. All right, on these altars. Okay, and it's a very prophetic time period. Okay, and what we pretty much what we're gonna get out of it, things that we can take from this. All right, the Lord defends his covenant. The Lord honors zeal for righteousness, and we can definitely correlate this to the times that we're coming in, because I mean, again, you're dealing with the Greek Empire, which were Edomites. All right, and we're still under the rule and thumb of the Edomites and today. Okay, so some more things to take from this is the Lord heals what the enemy defiles. Okay, and now we know, now we're talking about, when you talk about the temple, is a spiritual temple. The Israelites don't have a physical temple as of now. All right, the Lord is dealing with us on a spiritual level. Okay, um, the Most High brings light after darkness. Just some things to take away, from what we're going to go into. God himself stood in the feast. All right, John 10. So let's kind of give a little backdrop. All right, Feast of Dedication, Hanukkah, or Hanukkah. All right, the Feast of Dedication, later called Hanukkah, commemorates the rededication of the Jerusalem Temple in 164 BCE, after it was desecrated by the Seleucid ruler Antiochus IV Epiphanes. Antiochus outlawed key Torah practices, circumcision, Sabbath observance, erected pagan altars in the temple, and sacrificed unclean animals, an act remembered as the abomination of desolation. All right. And that was prophesied in Daniel. Okay. And I want to kind of go straight into it. First Maccabees 1 and 41, because again, this is a really, really, really important part of our history that gets left out. Okay. And there was a time, it was a time where it almost, when you read, it almost feels like they were going to wipe us out, um, again, very dark time, a time of where we were fighting for our laws to maintain ourselves. in the earth. All right. And of course, like always, the Lord had showed, mercy, and he always preserved a remnant of his Israelites. Okay. Let's start here. All right. And I'm gonna jump a little bit. All right. So let's see here. First Maccabees 1:41. This is more of a King Antiochus or Antiochus. All right, wrote to his whole kingdom, that all should be one people. All right. And every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. All right. So you had, some treason going on. All right. Among the Israelites. Okay. And this time they applied the, pressure, real pressure. Okay. And I believe Mattathias, okay, they tried to bribe him. All right, the father of Judas Maccabees and his brothers, they tried to bribe him, and he kept his integrity, and he died. All right, in front of his people. Okay, which was a very noble thing. He kept his integrity, and in the sight of tyranny, in the sight of being destroyed by his enemies. All right, but that sparked something. Okay, sparked something in in his sons. All right, Judas being one of those sons, Judas Maccabees. Okay, and the spirit of the Lord was with Judas. All right, and Judas was very valiant. Okay, and he won a lot of wars, and he went out on his sword. He didn't have to, and it actually he was told, he was kind of warned not to, but he wanted to die honorably, you know, and that just speaks a lot to their character, and things that we can just look back and kind of have hope, you know. And man, let me tell you, things that we go through, man, is nothing, nothing, nowhere near what they had to face. Now we are coming down to the wire when it comes to Esau, and the finality of this perpetual fight between Jacob and Esau. All right, the descendants of Esau and the descendants of Jacob, which we are, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans are the descendants of Jacob, and the so-called white men, all right, are the descendants of Esau. Okay, so it's coming to its final, its finality. All right, so I am going to do a little jumping. So here we go. Let's keep going though. All right. It says, yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. All right. For the king has sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land. Okay. So he put out that order. He sent out letters, right? And he made it a law essentially against keeping your customs as an Israelite. All right. It says, and forbade or forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple. Right. And that and this is like really the most diabolical thing you could do to us as a people. All right. Stop our customs, stop our way of life, because these customs is our way of life. All right. This is how we prosper. All right. This is, we keep these things up, and this is how the Lord shows favor unto us. All right. It says, in that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days. All right. And pollute the sanctuary and holy people. Okay. And the heathen has always done this. All right, it's nothing new. Or you had the Babylonians. All right, was the first time. Okay, they sacked the temple, broke down the walls, took the treasures. Okay, and this time is a what is it? Abomination, desolation. Okay, so it says, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. All right, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. Okay, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and of profanation. All right, or profanation. All right, Salakia. Okay, and what's being done here is they're trying to isolate us from our power, our God. Okay, and this is Esau. This is Antiochus the fourth Epiphanes. All right, which he's really diabolical. All right, a really hateful, Edomite towards you Israelites. Okay, but the history, the prophecy said this was going to happen. Okay, it says to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. You see, and they always were in opposition to the heathen. Speaking of the heathen, they were always in opposition to uh, our way of life, and they still are. Okay, they still are. And you got Jake saying that the heathen can be saved. Well, the heathen ain't trying to save themselves. They want us away from the covenant promises. They want us to turn away from the Heavenly Father, even till this day. Okay, so, and it's just history backing it up, and whosoever would not do according to the commandment of the king, he said he should die. You see? So you got put to death by what? Keeping your customs. All right. And he came down with wrath. All right. It says, in the self same manner wrote he to his whole kingdom. All right. And appointed overseers over all the people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice city by city. Right. Sacrifice what though? Swine's flesh. Okay. It says, then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, every one that forsook the law, and so they committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, so where we had to hide out, even wheresoever they could flee for succor. Okay. All right.
Right. So they're about to make their move again. All right. Slakia, I'm having technical difficulties, so this video might be chopped up. But yeah, they're gonna make their move again. As it says here, right? Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people. That's coming again. All right. That's coming again. All right. And what? It's gonna be a crime to be an Israelite, right? But again, history repeats itself. All right. We always learn from history. Okay. So in this again, this sparked a revolt, this abomination desolation. All right. Or abomination that make it desolate. Okay, so let's continue. Let's just finish this out. Right. So it says now, verse 58, it says, thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month to as many as were found in the cities. Now, the 25th day of the month, they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God, at which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. Right? They went after those who kept the customs. Okay. and they're slightly going after those. Well, no, you know what? Let's just continue, okay? Because I gotta have it correlating, modern times to history. But it says, and they hanged the infants about their necks, and rifled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. You see, so it was really bad. That's a really dark time. All right, and we've never witnessed nothing on this level before. Okay, um, but I can tell you, all right, it's coming. Again. Okay, but again, just like the Lord have saved the remnant in that time, the Lord's going to save the remnant in our time. So, verse 62, it says, "Howbeit many in Israel will fully resolve and confirm in themselves not to eat any unclean thing." So, what? You had Israelites who kept the customs, okay, regardless of their lives being at stake, okay. Wherefore, the rather to die that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. All right. And there was a very great wrath upon Israel. You see, so horrible times, but they were so dedicated. All right, that they weren't willing to defile themselves. Okay, that's how much we had a fear of the Lord. You know, okay, that's how much we have fear of the Lord, man. Okay. So let's see here. What else do I have? All right. So we proved that just by a few precepts that what's taken here, place here in First Maccabees is prophetic. Okay. So the next thing is faithful. All right. These dedicated Israelites who was resilient. All right. Here, I'm gonna do some jumping slocking. Okay. We're gonna jump up a few verses. All right. All right. Here. First Maccabees chapter 2. I can start at the beginning, but I want to start here. All right. Okay. Just to give you a visual of what's taking place and why the temple had to be rededicated. All right. All right. So verse 14, First Maccabees 2 and 14, it says, Then Mattathias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourn very sore. All right. In the meanwhile, the king's officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city of Modin, to make them sacrifice. So they were going city to city once every month to force them to sacrifice, swine's flesh and all abominable things. All right. It says, and when many of Israel came unto them, Mattathias also and his sons came together and answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias, all right, on this wise that thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Right now, therefore, come thou first. Right, because they'll always come after the leader. Okay, and they know if you cut the head, then the body falls. All right, and they did this so it can be easy for people to just follow. But this, this right here is a beautiful thing right here because he doesn't consent. See, a lot of Jake They're going to be in the spirit of consenting unto this devil when he comes down with pressure. And Lord willing, the Lord gives us strength to revolt. All right. Just like Mattathias did. All right. And that's going to spark, you know, uh, a new wave of, you know, glory for the believers. All right. And strength. Okay. It says, now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done. Yea, and the men of Judah also, and such as remain at Jerusalem, so shalt thou and thy house be in the number of the king's friends. See? So you're going to be among the king's friends, right? And thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. Then Mattathias answered and spake with a loud voice, though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him and fall away every one from the religion, in other words, worship of their fathers, right? And give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren walk in the covenant of our fathers. Okay. And just like, because I always like to correlate, and for us now, we're not going to be ashamed of this gospel when persecution comes. Okay, because it's not a time in our history where we're not under some type of threat. All right, and we continue to be under threat. All right, we continue to have no rest in this world. Okay, so God forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. We will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion either on the right hand or the left. Now, when he had left speaking these words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin, according to the king's commandment. All right. So you had that one Jew, all right, which thing when Mattathias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, right? And his reins trembled, neither could he forbear to shew his anger according to to judgment, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. Right? He was mad, he was zealous, man. He got angry, and for a righteous reason. Okay. Also, the king's commissioner who compelled men to sacrifice, he killed at that time, and the altar he pulled down. Beautiful, man. It says, thus dealt he zealously for the law of God, like as Phinehas, all right, did unto Zimri, all right, the son of Salom, okay. And Mattathias cried throughout the city with a loud voice, saying, whosoever is zealous of the law and maintaineth the covenant, let him follow me. So he and his sons fled into the mountains, right, and left all that ever they had in the city. Then many that sought after justice and judgment went down into the wilderness to dwell there, right, both they and their children and their wives and their cattle, because afflictions increased sore upon them. So they, you know, they they had to flee. All right, things got very uncomfortable. Okay, it got very uncomfortable. All right. Now, when it was told the king's servants and the host that was at Jerusalem in the city of David that certain men who had broken the king's commandment were gone down into the secret places in the wilderness, they pursued after them a great number. And having overtaken them, they camped against them and made war against them on the Sabbath day, right? That's the day when we rested. Okay. So part of that history is that they was taking us out on the Sabbath day because they knew we were resting and we wouldn't fight. We wouldn't pick up no sword, anything like that. So they took advantage. So you just imagine the casualties, and just the evil that pursued from that, man. So it says, and they said unto them, let that which ye have done hitherto suffice. Come forth and do according to the commandment of the king, and ye shall live. Still enticing them, still forcing them to try, you know, to go off. It says, but they said, we will not come forth, neither will we do the king's commandment to profane the Sabbath day. So then they gave them the battle with all speed. Howbeit they answered them not, neither cast they a stone at them, nor stopped the places where they lay hid, but said, let us die all in our innocency. Heaven and earth will testify for us. So they were that zealous, man. They believed that much, they had that much fear, right? That ye put us to death wrongfully. Okay, so they rose up against them in battle on the Sabbath, and they slew them with their wives and children and their cattle to the number of 1,000 people. Now, when Mattathias and his friends understood hereof, they mourned for them right sore. And one of them said to another, if we all do as our brethren have done, and fight not for our lives and laws against the heathen, they will now quickly root us out of the earth. At that time, therefore, they decreed, saying, whosoever shall come to make battle with us on the Sabbath day, we will fight against him, neither will we die all as our brethren that were murdered in the secret places. All right. Then came there unto him a company of Assyrians, who were mighty men of Israel, even all such as were voluntarily devoted unto the law. Also all they that fled for persecution joined themselves unto them, and were a stay unto them, right? In other words, a help. Okay. All right. So they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger, right? And those are the other Israelites, okay, who were consenting unto the king, and wicked men in their wrath, but the rest fled to the heathen for succor. So you had Israelites that fled to the heathen for succor. Then Mattathias and his friends went round about and pulled down the altars, okay, and what children soever they found within the coast of Israel's uncircumcised, those they circumcised valiantly. They pursue also after the proud men, and the work prosper in their hand. All right. All right. So let me do a little skipping. Okay. Let's see here. Well, yeah, let me. Well, yeah, I can continue. It says, so they recovered the law out of the hand of the Gentiles. All right, and out of the hand of the king, and out of the hand of kings, neither suffered they the sinner to triumph. Now, when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, right? And the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now, therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time, right? So shall ye receive great honor and an everlasting name, all right? Because this is what really matters, okay? All right, receiving honor, okay, of the Heavenly Father, okay, and in an everlasting name, okay, because there's nothing above a name, all right, which is your reputation, okay, and this is in our time. That's what we want to. This is what we're fighting for, a name, you know. All right, you're gonna have a lot of Israelites do as these Israelites did in this time, which is pretty much go after the consent or consent unto the king, dropping all their law, dropping their way of life. Okay, but you always had a remnant that said, you know what, no, never. All right. And this is what we cannot forget. Okay. So was not Abraham found faithful in temptation, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness? Joseph, in the time of his distress, kept the commandment and was made Lord of Egypt. Phinehas, all right, our father, being zealous and fervent, obtained the covenant of an everlasting priesthood. Yahweh Shai, for or let me see. No, that's Joshua actually, for fulfilling the or Hawashai, for fulfilling the word was made a judge in Israel. Caleb, yeah, because you had Joshua and Caleb, for bearing witness before the congregation, received the heritage of the land. David, for being merciful, possessed the throne of an everlasting kingdom. All right. So just to give you, you know, uh, some history, all right, what was taking place, all right, and this kind of goes on and on, all right. We're being attacked. We, in this case, we were being attacked on the Sabbath at a very vulnerable point, all right. Um, then, realizing that they can wipe us out, you know, they made it pretty much a pact to just fight, you know, okay, because the heathen they were going to be relentless, all right, and they weren't going to stop. Okay, so let's see here. Fina has, all right, that's numbers 25 and 11. I turned my wrath away while he was zealous for my sake. And then you got Exodus 20 and 5. The Lord, thy God, am a jealous God. That's right. Psalm 69 and 9. It says, for the zeal of thine house hath eaten me up. That's right, and that's why these men, they went after those Israelites who was consenting, they had to get rid of them. Okay. All right. The Maccabees acted in biblical zeal. All right. Not rebellion. Okay. Not in treason. Okay. All right. And the Lord is always honored. All right. That zealousness. All right. Standing up for the right thing. Okay. But you're going to find out you got a lot of Israelites who are, they're light-hearted men, or they're evil men, and you can sell them cheap. All right. What do we know? All right. What do we know? What do we understand? Right. Victory don't come. It's my favorite precept. Victory comes. What it say here? All right. This is First Maccabees, the 3rd chapter. And I'll read a few verses from this chapter. Okay. All right. So First Maccabees chapter 3. All right. And 17. 18. It says, unto whom Judas answered, it is no hard matter for many to be shut up in the hands of a few. All right. And with the God of heaven, it is all one to deliver with a great multitude or a small company. All right. And that's very true when you're dealing with the Lord. Okay. Just like Gideon, he had 300 men. All right. But these men were faithful men, men that were ready for war. Okay. All right. So, and this is after Mattathias had died. Okay. He died, standing up for the basically for everything, for his customs, his law, his life, his family, right? And then Judas rose up in his stead, as it says here in verse 1. It says, then his son Judas, called Maccabeus, all right, rose up in his stead, and all his brethren helped him, right? And so did they all they that held with his father, and they fought with cheerfulness the battle of Israel. So he got his people great honor and put on a breastplate as a giant, all right, and girt his warlike harness about him, and he made battles protecting the host with his sword, all right, and Judas was known for that, okay. In his acts, he was like a lion, right, and like a lion's whelp, roaring for his prey. For he pursued the wicked and sought them out and burnt up those that vex his people. Okay, and so that's just kind of giving you some history. All right, here, let's see here. Second Maccabees. All right, all right, because this goes on and on throughout the Maccabees. All right, let's see what 18 and 18 says. 8 and 18, excuse me. All right. All right. And I think, you know what? Yeah, I'm kind of jumping ahead. I don't want to jump ahead too far. All right. So let's do this. Yeah, because I am kind of jumping ahead. First Maccabees chapter 4. All right. And we'll get to the points because, I mean, it's very long. And let's see here. All right. So Maccabees 4. All right. And let's start with a few verses. The point being in like the 52nd verse and the 53rd. We're gonna read it all the way to 59. Okay. And let's see here. So first Maccabees chapter 4, verses 36, it says, Then said Judas and his brethren, Behold, our enemies are discomfited. Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Okay. Because I mean you had a whole list of wars. All right. I think I got it written down. A whole list of battles, excuse me. All right. You had a lot of battles, all right, that Judas Maccabees fought, after the passing of his father Mattathias. Okay. Um, and you had a lot of what? So you had the battle of Ale, Livona, right? Judas sieging his homeland, just to give a quick synopsis, and bring in righteousness, you know. So remember, they had to go in the wilderness for succor, for security, for safety, to be safe away, because the king was sending those orders, and they would go into the cities of Judah every month or every so often to force them to sacrifice. So Judas was winning strongholds, and he was getting certain cities back. Okay. Um, let's see here. Okay, let's see, Salakia. So this is First Maccabees 3. Because I'm reading in my book, I got particular points highlighted, like the good parts, right? So let's before we go to First Maccabees 4, the rededication, okay, which they cleaned the temple up, they got rid of all the idols, but you had many battles that ensued before that happened. So we'll go back to verse 19, right? And we'll read up. Slakia. So First Maccabees 3 and 19 says, "For the victory of battle standeth not in the multitude of an host, but strength cometh from heaven." All right. They come against us in much pride and iniquity to destroy us and our wives and children and to spoil us. But we fight for our lives and our laws. Wherefore the Lord himself will overthrow them before our face. And as for you, be not afraid of them. All right. And time again, the Lord always shows up. Now we do suffer casualties, just like now in this time when Esau comes down with great wrath, we're gonna suffer casualties. But what is the Lord gonna do for us? He's gonna be with us. He's gonna be with a small remnant, you know. And Second Ezra, what 16 and 68, the wrath of a great multitude is kindled over you. And the scripture says he's gonna take some of you, feed you with things offered unto idols. All right, but then it goes into how they're gonna come in as basically like a flood. All right, and destroy those that fear the Lord. And the scriptures say, "Then shall the elect be known." So there's always, in scarce, as the scriptures say, the righteous shall be scarcely saved. All right. So we're going to be in a situation where you are going to see Israelites being put to death, but the Lord is going to be with a remnant. All right. Then shall the chosen be known, or the elect be known. You know, it's going to come in that scarce moment. All right. It's going to come when that time is very dangerous. All right. But the Lord is going to uphold his the faithful. All right. It says, "But we fight for our lives and our laws, wherefore the Lord himself will throw them before our face. And as for you, be not afraid of them." Now, as soon as he had left off speaking, he leapt suddenly upon them, and so Saran and his host was overthrown, all right, before him. And they pursued them from the going down of Beth-horon unto the plain, where were slain about 800 men of them, and the residue fled into the land of the Philistines. Then began the fear of Judas and his brethren, and an exceeding great dread to fall upon the nations round about them. So we went from, being destroyed, um, you know, being hunted down, and to becoming a force. All right, and that was the Lord's doing. Okay, so it says, "Insomuch as his fame came unto the king, and all nations talked of the battles of Judas." Okay, now when King Antiochus heard these things, he was full of indignation, wherefore he sent and gathered together all the forces of his realm, even a very strong army. And it wasn't just Edomites. You had other nations that were helping him as well. Okay, he opened also his treasure and gave his soldiers pay for a year, commanding them to be ready whensoever he should need them. Nevertheless, when he saw that the money of his treasures failed, and that the tributes in the country were small, because of the dissension and plague which he had brought upon the land, and taking away the laws which had been of old time, he feared that he should not be able to bear the charges any longer, nor to have such gifts to give so liberally as he did before, for he had abounded above the kings that were before him. Wherefore, being greatly perplexed in his mind, he determined to go into Persia, there to take the tributes of the countries and to gather much money. Right? So he had to get his affairs in order. All right. Okay. So as you can see, um, the Lord put the spirit on Judas, okay, to kind of fight back and have, you know, our enemies on their heels. Okay. So let's go to chapter 4. All right. And hit some of these points here. All right. So Maccabees chapter 4, verses. See here. So there's another battle here in chapter 4. Okay. And this is actually leading up to, all right, the rededication. Okay. So I skipped some history, but when you had a time, just read it. All right. And it's, it's a very uh, good history to go back to, you know. So cleansing and rededication of the temple. All right. Let's start. All right. Let's start at 36. Okay. All right. Well, 35. It says, now when Lysias, all right, First Maccabees 4, the fourth chapter, the 35th verse, saw his army put to flight, and the manliness of Judas's soldiers, and how they were ready either to live or die valiantly, he went into Antiochia and gathered together a company of strangers, and having made his army greater than it was, he purposed to come again to Judea. Then said Judas and his brethren, behold, our enemies are discomfited. Right? Let us go up to cleanse and dedicate the sanctuary. Okay. So the Lord put the spirit on them, right, to fight back, and ultimately so they can, establish a foothold again. All right. Upon this, all the hosts assembled themselves together and went up into Mount Zion. And when they saw the sanctuary desolate, and the altar profane, and the gates burned, and shrubs growing in the courts as in a forest or in one of the mountains, yea, and the priests' chambers pulled down, they rent their clothes and made great lamentation, and cast ashes upon their heads, right? So this hurt them, all right, to see, the desolation, okay, which was prophesied that this would happen, all right, in Daniel. Okay, it says, and fell down to the ground upon their faces and blew an alarm with the trumpets and cried toward heaven. Then Judas appointed certain men to fight against those that were in the fortress until he had cleansed the sanctuary. So he chose priests of blameless conversation, meaning conduct, such as had pleasure in the law, who cleansed the sanctuary and bare out the defiled stones into a unclean place. And when as they consulted what to do with the altar of burnt offerings, which was profane, they thought it best to pull it down, lest it should be a reproach to them, because the heathen had defiled it. Right? And so they got rid of everything that offended. They got rid of everything that was, that was defiled. Okay, to the best of their ability. Right? Wherefore they pulled it down and laid up the stones in the mountain of the temple in a convenient place, until there should come a prophet to shew what should be done with them, right? So you notice they always got to wait on the prophet, okay? Because he is the Lord's mouthpiece, right? Then they took whole stones according to the law and built a new altar according to the former, and made up the sanctuary and the things that were within the temple, and hollowed the courts. They made also new holy vessels, and into the temple they brought the candlestick and the altar of burnt offerings and of incense and the table. And upon the altar they burned incense, and the lamps that were upon the candlesticks or candlestick they lighted, that they might give light in the temple. All right, because it was a very, spiritually, it was a very dark time. Okay, and so the light represents what the Lord, you know, bringing forth light in a very, you know, a very evil time, a very, tumultuous time. Okay, so let's see here. All right, let me jump to verse 59. All right, moreover, Judas. Well, you know what? Let me just keep reading. All right. Um, they made, Salaki, verses 51. It says, furthermore, they set the loaves upon the table and spread out the veils and finished all the works which they had begun to make. All right. So at a time where it seemed like they were completely, desolate, the Lord made way for them to come back. Now on the 5 and 20th day of the month, ninth month, excuse me, which is called the month Caslu, in the 148th year, they rose up betimes in the morning and offered sacrifice according to the law upon the new altar of burnt offerings, which they had made. Said, look at what time and what day the heathen had profaned it, even in that was it dedicated with songs and cisterns, uh, and harps and cymbals. Then all the people fell upon their faces, worshiping and praising the God of heaven, who had given them good success. And so they kept the dedication of the altar 8 days and offered burnt offerings with gladness and sacrificed the sacrifice of deliverance and praise. All right. So that's what this was all about, deliverance. All right. Okay. From a very diabolical tyrant. All right. Antiochus. All right. Before it says they decked also the forefront of the temple with crowns of gold and with shields, and the gates and the chambers they renewed and hanged doors upon them. Thus was there very great gladness among the people, for that the reproach of the heathen was put away. Moreover, Judas and his brethren with the whole congregation of Israel ordained that the days of the dedication of the altar should be kept in their season from year to year by the space of 8 days, from the 5 and 20th day of the month Caslu, with mirth and gladness. All right, which is, a beautiful time. All right. Second Chronicles 29:5. All right, just to correlate, correlate back and forth from the, scriptures to the Apocrypha, which the Apocrypha is the scriptures. All right, so 29:5, and it reads, it says, brief forms begun. It says, and said unto them, hear me, ye Levites, sanctify now yourselves and sanctify the house of the Lord Yahweh, right, which they did, okay, your power of the God of your fathers, all right, and carry forth the filthiness out of the holy place. And that's what they were doing, right? For our forefathers have trespassed and done that which was evil in them. Right. So, all right. So they was just doing things according to, customs that were that were previously done. All right, all right. Psalms 30. All right, 30:1. It says, "I will extol." It says, "Psalm and song at the dedication of the house of David. I will extol thee, O Lord, for thou hast lifted me up and hast not made my foes to rejoice over me. O Lord, my power, I cried unto thee, and thou hast healed me." Right? O Lord, Yahweh, thou hast brought up my soul from the grave. Thou hast kept me alive that I should not go down to the pit. All right. For his anger endured but a moment. Oh, so like it sing unto the Lord Yahweh, o ye saints of his, and give thanks at the remembrance of his holiness. All right, so let's move on. All right. So we understand Hanukkah is about what restoration, all right, of holiness. And we use what the lights as a symbol, you know, okay, of the symbology behind that. So see here, right? John 10:22. And this is the Lord, you know, pretty much backing or referencing, all right, these historical points. Yahushua asserts his deity. All right, John 10:22, and it says, "And it was at Jerusalem the feast of dedication, and it was winter. And Yahushua walked in the temple of Solomon's porch." So he's referencing what Judas Maccabees and his cohorts did, all right, when they fought back against the Greeks. All right. All right. So it says Yahushua walked in the temple of Solomon's porch. So he was commemorating the dedication. Okay. You know, I know this was it was long drawn out, but you know, for my sake, I like to read, and if this, was edifying to you, well, Lord willing, it was edifying to you because it's edifying to me. So as you can see, man, the the Lord, he defended his covenant. He defended his people, right? And he honors the zeal and righteousness of our people. Okay, because those sacrifices, them remembering the Lord and having fear of the Lord over, the pressure that Esau was bringing, that's going to be honored. All right. Okay. And we know what the Lord eventually he restores what the enemy, defiles. All right. And our Lord is going to bring light. He's going to bring light. All right. Just like he brought light then. Okay. So Lord willing, this was edifying. All right. Until next time, I'm going to say shalom.